removal of all stray dogs order was received with a mix of reactions. In Morocco, animal welfare groups have accused the government of culling stray dogs as it prepares to host football's 2030 World Cup. But the kingdom denies the accusations, vying to protect the canines. We'll talk about that shortly. The show starts now. Mali's junta has carried out arrests to quash an alleged plot to overthrow the government within the army's ranks. But the circumstances of the detentions remain unexplained. The West African nation's junta, which itself came to power in back-to-back coups in 2020 and 2021, has made 55 arrests, mainly among the National Guard and the military branch. The military-backed government has yet to officially comment on the crackdown, which comes as the army is locked in fighting with jihadists and separatists. Here is our cover report. Dozens of soldiers have been arrested in Mali, accused of plotting to topple the country's military leaders. The wave of arrests, which reportedly went on overnight and are expected to continue, reflect increased tensions within the military government, with reports that a jihadist insurgency in the north is gaining ground. The detained soldiers were allegedly planning to overthrow the government, citing multiple sources within the military and junta-backed transitional council. There had been about 50 arrests, while a security source said there were at least 20 arrests linked to attempts to destabilize the institutions. The arrests have reportedly been going on over a number of days now. They come amid political tension heightened by the junta's crackdown on former Prime Ministers Moussa Mara and Choguel Maiga over accusations of harming the reputation of the state and embezzlement. Mara, a recent outspoken critic of the military government, has been in detention since 1st of August, while Maiga is facing judicial sanctions. In May, the junta dissolved all political parties following rare anti-government protests, which Mara described as a severe blow to reconciliation efforts initiated by the military leaders last year.
Article 1. Political parties and organizations of a political nature shall be dissolved throughout the national territory. However, persons holding office in the political and administrative institutions of the state, by virtue of a designation by a political party or an organization of a political nature, may continue to carry out their duties without being able to claim to be representatives of political parties or organizations of a political nature.
Young representatives of Malian opposition parties, fearing their dissolution by the ruling junta, met in Bamako and called for respect for democracy. They raised their voices despite a crackdown on dissent and a shrinking civic space. The military announced the repeal of a charter which sets out the creation and function of political parties in what legal experts said could be another move towards scrapping them entirely.
Our initiative is not against the authorities, it is not against anyone. It is for a cause, which is democracy and political pluralism.
The disease has not been fully declared, but we will nevertheless monitor the symptoms closely and take the best possible measures to maintain peace in Mali and preserve what little stability we have left. Because it must be said that a country facing so many difficulties does not need to create more, especially among young people.
The junta leader, General Assimi Goïta, who seized power through 2 coups in 2020 and 2021, had promised elections last year, but these have never been held. In July, the transition period was extended by 5 years, clearing him to continue leading the country until at least 2030. Mali has been fighting an Islamist insurgency since 2012, one of the reasons given for the military takeover, but attacks by jihadist groups have continued and even increased. Alongside its neighbors Niger and Burkina Faso, it has enlisted the help of Russian allies to contain the jihadist attacks in the region after breaking ties with France. But there has been no significant improvements in security. Africa Bureau, WION, World is One. Boko Haram is luring young people with no prospects from the Lake Chad, where 96% of the population is illiterate, and young people have resigned themselves to scraping by with intermittent jobs. This is a boon for the jihadist group, which recruits disadvantaged people by promising them a steady income.
Boko Haram jihadists have sowed terror among those living around Lake Chad for some 15 years, disrupting the fishing, farming, and herding on which millions depend. Surrounded by Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and Nigeria, Lake Chad's countless islets serve as hideouts for the Islamist militants, whose violent campaign began in Nigeria's northeast before spilling into its neighbors. Jihadist attacks have surged in the wider Sahel region, though Boko Haram has lost ground to the army in the Lake Chad area. The insurgents have nevertheless remained a constant threat, carrying out frequent kidnappings, executions, rapes, and lootings. In Chad's Lac province alone, more than 250,000 people have been forced to flee their homes, says the United Nations, tipping people further into poverty in one of the world's most impoverished nations only helps turn the area into a recruiting ground for the jihadists.
The reason why the Boko Haram terrorists hibernate on the island, because it isolates them from the outside, thereby making it very difficult for the military to reach them. That's their thinking. And so there are times we do bomb them from the air, but it's not too effective.
Like 2,000 others, Baya Ali Musa and Ahmad Musa have taken refuge in Yakua, some 20 kilometers from the Lac region's capital, Bol, on the banks of a branch of the lake. For 3 months, the Acted humanitarian organization has distributed emergency aid to the displaced people in Yakua. Chad's Lac region is one of many around the world to be hit by cuts in the United States' foreign aid budget ordered by President Donald Trump.
They are using commercial drones for military activities. They tie bombs to commercial drones and use them as kamikaze drones. That is, they control the drones onto the troops and just release the bomb, or sometimes together with the drones, to bomb troops' location. They target our logistics base, our command and control centers.
Having accounted for half of the World Food Programme's funding, the United States was the UN Food Agency's top bankroller, followed by Europe. At the beginning of July, the WFP suspended its flight service between the Chadian capital N'Djamena and Bol.
The Boko Haram terrorists that have been fighting for more than 10 years, they were having a large chunk of the land under them, but now everything is retrogressing for them. Nobody fights a government and win. So the best thing is that they should come out, surrender, and there is a place for them if they surrender.
As the international climate for humanitarian funding has gone cold, at the national level, Chad has also prioritized sending emergency aid to its eastern border with war-torn Sudan. More than 1 million Sudanese have fled to Chad since the civil war began in April 2023. Africa Bureau WION, World is One.
Advocates have charged that Morocco was indiscriminately ridding its streets of stray dogs ahead of the global sporting event it will jointly host with Portugal and Spain. Authorities in the North African country, however, insist they had endorsed a non-lethal method known as TNVR to trap, neuter, vaccinate, and then release the dogs, aimed at reducing public health risks while controlling the stray population. Here's a report.
Advocates have charged that Morocco was indiscriminately ridding its streets of stray dogs ahead of football's 2030 World Cup it will jointly host with Portugal and Spain. Authorities in the North African country, however, insist they had endorsed a non-lethal method known as TNVR to trap, neuter, vaccinate, and then release the dogs, aimed at reducing public health risks while controlling the stray population.
In other words, in 2019, when the TNVR trap, neuter, vaccinate, return method was adopted, there were very few animal shelters or clinics. Now, we are accelerating the implementation of TNVR by putting in place the necessary infrastructure. Currently, around 20 animal clinics are under construction.
A bill aimed at protecting street animals was adopted earlier this month is still pending Parliament review. It would set fines of up to $1,500 or jail terms of up to 3 months for harming stray dogs. Yet the culling accusations persist as online videos show dogs being shot or poisoned with strychnine, a toxic alkaloid which is sometimes used as a pesticide.
I am delighted to tell you that we have a huge number of people contacting us, begging us to go to their neighborhoods to collect dogs, to neuter them, to vaccinate them, to identify them, because they are all against culling and they want to protect these animals. Our goal is to protect everyone. Public health means human health, animal health, and environmental health. It is essential that local authorities are aware of this.
An online petition launched by the International Animal Coalition to end the violent killing of dogs on the streets and beaches of Morocco has gathered nearly 75,000 signatures. Moroccan Interior Minister Abdelouafi Laftet has decried media attacks against the government with wrong and out-of-context information. Advocates say Morocco has around 3 million stray dogs, but no official figures exist.
Efforts have been made to build this shelter, which is a clinic built on an area of 1 hectare, consisting of an administrative block, an operating block, and kennels that will house and take in stray dogs.
What is needed is for people to take proper care of dogs that are vaccinated, dewormed, and tagged, because when these dogs are settled in neighborhoods, there are no stray dogs coming in. Unfortunately, I say this in all sincerity, sometimes there are abuses.
Malheureusement, je le dis en toute sincérité, parfois il y a des excès.
Each year, there are about 100,000 stray dog bites nationwide, according to official data. In 2024, authorities said 33 people died from rabies, which is often transmitted by unvaccinated animals. Moroccan authorities have developed a mobile app explaining what these clinics do and allowing users to report sightings of stray dogs. Africa Bureau, WION, World is One.
A court in Chad jailed former Prime Minister and opposition leader Success Masra for 20 years, convicting him of hate speech, xenophobia, and having incited a massacre. The court in N'Djamena jailed Masra, one of President Mahamat Idris Deby Itno's fiercest critics, for his role in inciting intercommunal violence in which 42 people were killed on May 14th.
As you have seen, we are unfortunately witnessing the establishment of a practice that consists of manipulating the justice system to settle political scores. We cannot stress this enough, and it is regrettable for our country. The justice system did not have the courage to assert itself. It did not have the courage to demonstrate its independence as a power, but that it is in the pay of people who think they can use it as a tool to settle or resolve their political problems or settle scores.
In Sudan's war-scarred capital Khartoum, Red Crescent volunteers have begun the grisly task of exhuming the dead from makeshift plots where they were buried during the fighting so that their families can give them a proper funeral. Here's a report.
Teams of workers in dust-streaked white hazmat suits comb vacant lots, looking for the spots where survivors say they buried their loved ones. Mechanical diggers peel back layers of earth under the watchful eye of Hisham Zain al-Abdin, head of the city's forensic medicine department.
There are 317 graves here in the neighborhood containing the remains of people buried by relatives in a rush during the RSF violations.
Here, in the southern neighborhood of Al-Ajari, families buried their loved ones wherever they could as fighting raged between the regular army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. When war broke out in April 2023, the RSF quickly swept through Khartoum, occupying entire districts as residents fled air and artillery bombardments and street fighting. Jawahar Adam, standing by a shallow makeshift grave, tears streaming down her face, she lost her 12-year-old daughter, who was later buried here.
My daughter died while she was on her way to buy shoes. The place was surprisingly bombed and my daughter died. We couldn't find a place to bury her except here in the neighborhood.
Each body is disinfected, wrapped and labeled by Red Crescent volunteers before being transported to Al-Andalus Cemetery, 10 kilometers away. Many of the war's deadliest battlegrounds have been densely populated residential districts, often without access to hospitals to care for the wounded or count the dead. That has made it nearly impossible to establish a firm death toll for the war.
It is a public square. In the coming days, schools will be built here for the residents of the neighborhood. The remains here hindered the construction.
At least 8,000 people were reported missing in Sudan last year, in what the International Committee of the Red Cross says is only the tip of the iceberg. With the bodies now exhumed, the community can have some degree of closure, and the vacant lot can be repurposed. Africa Bureau, WION, World is One.
It is wedding season in the Comoros, when the diaspora return to the tiny Indian Ocean islands for days-long celebrations that mark an essential rite of passage, the Gran Mariage. The elaborate tradition-infused ceremonies which can be held years after an initial religious wedding, are most often held in July and August, coinciding with the summer holidays in France, which has a significant community of Comorian migrants. Here's a report.
On a recent day in July, Badjanani Square in central Moroni, the capital of the mainly Muslim nation off East Africa, was packed with hundreds of people attending a prayer ceremony ahead of the Gran Mariage of a couple based in the central French city of Le Mans. It can often take a couple several years after their first wedding, called the petit marriage, to accumulate the money required to host the second, more lavish event. But as costly as it is, the ceremony is valued for sealing the social status of a couple in the hierarchy of their community. A grand marriage can cost a couple their entire life savings, said Ali, who found in research in 2009 that the financial outlay then ranged between 6,000 and 235,000 euros.
Le Gran Mariage, ça marque.
The grand wedding marks the end of social learning. It means that he has followed all the rules that allow him to become responsible in the village. He enters another hierarchy, but the first hierarchy is based on age. Then there is a hierarchy of status groups, where he is responsible for making all decisions concerning the functioning of society in the village.
C'est par l'âge, c'est un grade d'âge.
Processions like this illustrate the Comoros matrilineal system and its practice of matrilocality, in which husbands move into the communities of their wives. The event announces to society that a woman's social status has improved.
It is a moment of celebration. Today, the entire town is informed that this is the new bride. She is a notable newcomer. She is the notable one.
A lot of emotion, a lot of happiness. I am surrounded by my loved ones, and that is all that matters. It is a beautiful moment.
The elaborate, tradition-infused ceremonies, which can be held years after an initial religious wedding, are most often held in July and August, coinciding with the summer holidays in France, which has a significant community of Comorian migrants. Africa Bureau, WION, World is One.
And that's all the buzz in Africa this week. Get in touch with us on all our social media platforms and our website and share your story with us from the continent. I'm Eric Njoka. Thank you for watching this week's episode of Wild of Africa on WION World is One. It's goodbye from me.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION.